No major complaints. It is what it is, right?
Have you gotten a shot yet?
No, I scheduled it today for May 30th. That's the soonest I could get it.
And then, Tracy, I will start the recording and you'll begin to go.
Okay. Just let me know when.
They're all joining. Give it a second. Should be all set. I'm going to start the video. Okay, it should be all set, Tracy.
Great. Oh, yes, there you are. See you all now. Okay. All ready? Everybody's in, Ed?
Yes.
Okay.
A couple people are
You're
still
recording.
We're all set here.
Okay, very good. Okay. Pardon me. Call this meeting to order the Naugatuck Inland Wetlands Commission. Today is Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021, and it is 6:34 p.m. And I'd like us all to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll recite.
Recording in progress.
I'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to take attendance so we can determine if there's a quorum. Marcia Putz?
Here.
Hello?
Hello, I'm here. Here, Tracy.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, okay?
Okay.
Brian Moore?
Here.
Kathleen Donovan?
Here.
Wendy Ann Fowler?
Here.
Rui Costa?
Here.
Okay. I'll note that we do have a quorum and no alternate is needed. And I will start this public hearing, the continued public hearing of for regulated activities considered significant associated with the application IW 20-08 for the bridge culvert crossing Pulling Mill Brook with associated grading, construction of building, parking, and roadway within a 100-foot upland review area for a commercial development at 0 Prospect Street. The count is 070-3100. And is Magdi Babawi and Ansi Tawadros. So this is a continued public hearing, and I understand that the applicant is present. And is there anything that the applicant would like to present at this time?
Good evening, Madam Chairman. For the record, my name is Michael McVeary. I'm an attorney with an office at 35 Porter Avenue in Naugatuck. On behalf of the applicants, this is a long continued public hearing on this application for a 10,000 square foot building and a stream crossing at 0 Prospect Street. We met a month ago today on February 3rd for about 3 hours with a public hearing, and it was continued to today, so that at that point our engineer Brian Ford had submitted a revised plans, revised information to the commission that you received about a week before the last hearing, so the commission wanted more time to review this. At 3:45 this afternoon, we received, the zoning office received at 3:43 a 7-page narrative review from Southwest Soils Conservation District with about, 50 pages of attachments to it, which we received at 3:45. I discussed with the Wetlands Enforcement Officer, Mrs. Rotella, the fact that we would need additional time in which to review what had been submitted. I do have a letter requesting and agreeing to a continuance of this public hearing. Now that letter, based on my conversations this afternoon with Mrs. Rotella, indicated that we had to have it completed by the 31st of March. That was a miscalculation. I had requested in my letter that the hearing be continued to either 29th, 30th, or 31st of March. Been informed when I came in tonight that we do have an additional 64 days.
36.
Sorry?
36.
36 days. So if the commission would just would be able to continue the hearing until your April meeting, which would be within the time limit rather than having to hold a special meeting. I mean, that is initially to preface my remarks. Now, at the last public hearing, there was a lot of discussion regarding a previous application made by the applicants back in 2009. We did get copies of that, and I think the commission all got copies of the application. And if you look at that application, it's a totally different subject. It was a stream crossing, but that proposed culverts as opposed to the clear crossing that's being proposed today. The 2009 application was only for the stream crossing, didn't include any development on site, which would have been something which would have happened after that. What we're looking at here is a clear span crossing of the stream and a 10,000 square foot building with parking involved. So the 2009 application is totally irrelevant to what's before the commission tonight. The commission did receive from the Naugatuck Valley Health District some information regarding, or their report regarding concerns raised about septic system and private wells. And it would appear that the issues on private wells, if anything, could be something that would improve if this were approved with conditions. But I also think that the private well issue is more of a zoning commission issue as opposed to inland wetlands. But having said that, we requested an extension. Mr. Plort is present to answer any questions that the commission may have with regard to the report that he filed for your last month's meeting, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you. So, excuse me. So our next meeting is April 7th. Lori and Ed, this would fall within that time period?
Yes. Yes, it would.
30? Okay. Okay. All right. If it falls within that time period, I'm not adverse to extending the public hearing until the April 7th meeting. But while you are here, since we do have a public hearing, if any members of the public want to voice any opinions in that way or ask questions, then at least you're here to hear that and pass that along to the applicant or be able to answer or take something back so that we are prepared for the April 7th meeting to address those items.
So Mrs. Rotella indicated this afternoon that the commission had expressed interest in having Mr. Plort present to respond to any concerns that may have been raised or questions that may have been raised as a result of what he submitted at your last month's hearing. So Brian is here.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening.
Right up, Brian.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. So, like Attorney McVeigh said, if there's any questions regarding what we submitted 5 weeks ago, the report which addressed Ed Pollock's comments and review of our submission, I'd be happy to try to answer them. We have not, in the meantime, this last month, we have not made any changes to the plans whatsoever.
Come closer to the microphone in the middle.
Okay.
To make sure that the public can hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Tracy, can you hear me? Marcia, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have any particular concerns. I appreciate that Brian Plort took the time to review Mr. Pollock's recommendations and made substantial changes, positive changes to the plan. So I know it's been a difficult site to work on, so I do appreciate that very much. And I do have a question though regarding the wells, the private wells, since that seems to be a very large concern for residents of the neighborhood and throughout town. And I know it said it's a zoning issue. I have just some questions about that, just in the different readings I've been doing, where there's a lot of talk about groundwater. And then specifically in our regulation 10.2.1, and I'm just wondering if I can get some clarification, maybe from town attorney on this and, you know, why it would be a zoning issue and not a wetlands issue when it pertains to groundwater that could then feed private wells. I'll give them a second to look that up.
You have to, let me look at the section, but the bottom line on the wells are the.
Tracy, can you hear Ned?
Can you hear me?
No, Ned, can you speak up or move closer to the microphone, please?
Thank you. So,
Thank you.
Right to your face now.
How we doing?
Right to your face.
Better?
Yep.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
Okay, so the question by the commissioner related to the issue of the wells and how that issue would relate to the, I suppose, the jurisdiction or the authority of the Wetlands Commission. I think that's where that was headed, right? Am I understanding correctly? So, the way I understand the provisions of the statute in some of the cases is that to the extent that the wells, that there is expert opinion that the impact on the wetlands is such that it would be, it is more likely than not to cause damage or like to the wells of the adjoining neighbors, the information may be material, but the commission would have to receive a substantial and expert opinion in connection with that, for that to be considered as a factor in evaluating, I won't say proving or denying, but evaluating the application. That's the way I believe where the case history is and the legislation is in connection with that issue. And we have other, Attorney McVeary is here. I don't know if Attorney McVeary would like to comment on that, or because that has come up in other forums and in other proceedings, but that's the way I view the current status of the case law. That answers your question.
So, I'm reading the reg, the 10.2.1, and the regulation states, the environmental impact of the proposed regulated activity on wetlands and watercourses, including the effects on the inland wetlands and watercourses' capacity to support fish and wildlife, to prevent flooding, to supply and protect surface and groundwaters, to control settlement, to facilitate drainage, to control pollution, to support recreational activities, and to promote public health and safety and welfare. The Commission reserves the right to review other activities beyond the 100-foot regulated area if the Commission determines that those activities have the possibility of causing an adverse impact on the inland, on the wetlands and watercourses. If the watercourses are going to be disturbed and that affects the public health, safety, and welfare, then I would think that that is within our jurisdiction. If the public health and safety and welfare has to do with well water, so that these people have potable water, or disrupts perhaps their septic system, and that it negatively impacts it, it does seem to me that it is within our rights as a commission to review that and comment on that. So that would be my interpretation of that regulation.
Right, so I agree that perhaps jurisdiction was the wrong word. It is within the jurisdiction, but there will need to be competent evidence presented to the commission of those types of findings that, in view of what I've read in this record with respect to what the applicant's experts have opined. So there is, it may come within the ambit of the wetlands jurisdiction, but in order to be considered as competent evidence in rendering a decision, there must be some expert evidence of that. Those are findings that are beyond a lay opinion, is set forth in the case law. So, with that caveat and understanding, I think the commission can proceed to evaluate the application.
Marsh, do you have any questions? I know you could probably hear a lot better than I could.
Well, I understand what Attorney Fitzpatrick is alluding to, or what he's stating. And I'm guessing we just received some information from Southwest Conservation that does seem to address, I haven't been able to go through it all yet, but it seems to touch on this topic where they do suggest a survey be done. Like I said, I haven't read it all yet, so the rest of the commissioners will take the time to do that and decide if we probably want to proceed to maybe gather some more evidence regarding the groundwater and impact on wells with construction. I think that's how I understand Attorney Fitzpatrick's response.
You need to speak a little louder. A lot of the people are not able to hear us. So outdoor voices, people, outdoor voices.
Madam Chair, one more comment. It's Ned again.
Thank you.
The Seminole case is the Avalon Bay case, and there are succeeding cases that cite the Avalon Bay case, and that essentially says that when there's claims of environmental hazards or environmental harm as a result of or impacts as a result of the proposed activity, that there must be some type of expert evidence and testimony with regard to that. So that was my expression about regarding competent evidence, meaning it has to be of expert quality, not mere, frankly, the court held that it was lay opinion was not sufficient. So that's the basis for my earlier statements. I hope that's clear to everyone. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I have to say it is difficult to hear, and I know the masks impede that. You know, it does help if maybe the speaker can be near whatever the recording device is that projecting everybody, because it's so difficult to hear the entire sentence that I think a lot, at least for me, I know is being missed, and probably for the other you know, attendees as well. So it's just, I just want to put that out there. It's really difficult to hear everything that's being said.
So if I may add, within the latest Southwest Conservation District that we just received this afternoon, on the
stand over by Ed Carter, please. I'm sorry. I know his microphone works great. Maybe that's better.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, let's try that. So Southwest Conservation District, and I think it was something that we had also put forward one of the last few meetings regarding this situation with the wells. And it would be a condition of approval we would be seeking, obviously, that quote, that would protect against loss of drinking water supply for the nearby residential structures. This could be an agreement from the developer that if drinking water wells are damaged or lost due to project work, that they will fund the repair, replacement, or extension of drinking water supplies so that all property owners maintain existing levels of service and function. So we're trying, we understand the concern, obviously. We don't know what the soils are, if there's going to be bedrock that we're going to be just needing to blast, basically, until we get onto the property. And we mentioned this a couple times before. So it would be a protection for the neighbors. That we are making note that we will, as Southwest has mentioned, protect the project, protect the construction, protect the wells of the neighbors.
Okay, so it's in the applicant's plan that should damage occur to the adjoining property owners' wells due to the activity on the property, that they will repair or replace the well or a water source. Because as you know, and if you've read the information from the Naugatuck Valley Health District, those are very narrow lots, so there's not a lot of room to put new wells. You have to be aware of the septic areas and everything like that. So that would be a concern, I'm sure, for the residents on that. So would the applicant be prepared to somehow, if it came down to it, bring city water and septic up to these residents at his cost?
There's no septic up there. There's no city
Well,
sewer up in that area. There's
you know.
nothing to bring it up to.
Is there city sewer or is there septic?
It's all septic.
It's all septic, right, so we wouldn't worry about sewer, we would bring.
Okay,
water.
then city water for these residents, for these property owners?
Right, and I checked with Connecticut Water where the nearest water main is that we could potentially tap into. And she mentioned that it was at the intersection of Worcester, and is it Applewood? Applewood, is that one? She says that that's where it ends. So to bring it up to the Costco Lane residences, it's about maybe 500 to 750 feet to get to the back side of Costco Lane. So it is an option. It would be obviously the larger option that we would like to avoid, but again, it is an option that's been requested.
And that's almost across from Whitney Place.
Exactly.
The residents on Whitney, it's kind of, there's no fill.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from the end of Whitney, it's only maybe 100 feet.
Yeah, because I know that was a concern, as we've heard from several residents, several members of the public. It's not just a wildlife concern, but they're also concerned with their well. And we've seen numerous with the Valley Health District, the Southwest Conservation District, commenting on that issue. So I think to put the neighboring property owners' minds at ease, I'm sure that they'd be very happy to hear that the applicant is willing to replace or repair or somehow make it so that they maintain a potable water source for their properties. Do any of the other commission members have any questions for Brian while he's here before we open it up to public comment?
Tracy, I just have 2 questions of clarification on the plans for Brian.
Okay, Kathleen, can you speak up?
Yep. Oh, thank you. Brian, I just want a clarification on the clear span bridge, bringing in the utilities. Would they be under the bridge or down? They would be directly under the bridge, but above the riverbed?
Correct.
The piping?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And my other question for clarification is, it looks like that the building itself is outside the upland review from what I looked at on
Just
the,
a very small corner.
over here,
Exactly.
like a couple feet.
Yeah, feet, yeah.
Okay.
5 square feet.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any questions for Brian? No? Okay, and do we have questions in the chat box then from the public?
We are not using the chat box, but we will go through everybody and see if they want to speak. They can raise their hand via Zoom, and we will go through them. I will go to Bill Sweet first. I'm going to ask him to unmute, and then he can comment.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. William Sweet, Costco Lane. First off, because there was a comment made regarding discussion on the 2009 project, which was false. I said it last time. That was a misrepresentation of what I was talking about. I wasn't talking about the 2009 project on 0 Prospect Street. So that we'll want that corrected immediately. The other thing is, I want to ask this question. When the health department spoke to my wife gave the hypothetical situation of losing our well, and he said we'd have to remove you from your house. Is the applicant willing to pay for my temporary residence while they extend the water up into Costco Lane? Is he willing to pay for the people's mortgages as they continue to pay for their house that they can't live in? That's a question I want to ask before I get into my letter. So regarding asking of information and needing to have an expert inform the commission of some item of concern on the property is absolutely false. I like to refer everybody to a case in Connecticut. It's Supreme Court of Connecticut number 18321. Unistar Properties versus Conservation and Inland Wetlands Commission at the town of Putnam. That was back in 2009, but what happened there was Putnam denied an application based on lack of information. And the applicant contested it and brought them to court, and the court supported the commission can ask for anything that's on the general statutes plus some. It's a very, very interesting case to consider. It's a 29-page PDF that I can supply to somebody if they want it, if they don't want to dig for it themselves. But also in there, the contention was, well, there was no particular wildlife or concern pointed out by an expert. The fact of the matter is, in the statutes, and I've read them a couple times now in those areas, it states that this commission doesn't even have to take the word of an expert. It needs the reports, it needs the studies, it needs, and not limited to the things that are listed on the thing before it can make a decision in the affirmative. So let me read my letter and it'll explain it a little more clearly. My wife Lisa and I remain opposed to this proposed development, and we respectfully request the members of the commission consider or reconsider the amount of information missing from this application that the Inland Wetlands Commission has the authority to require as stated in the regulations. Section 10, consideration for decision. 10.2, and I'm not trying to insult anybody, but the words mean things. The commission shall, that word shall means you will, consider all relevant facts and circumstances to make its decision on any application for permit in keeping with the purposes and policies of Connecticut General Statute Section 22A 36 through 22A 45 as amended. 10.5, the applicant has the burden of demonstrating that his application is consistent with the purposes and policies of these regulations and sections of the Connecticut General Statutes 22A through 36 and 22A 45 as amended. Items the Commission is authorized to require but currently is missing from this application include 8.6.4, an analysis of wildlife habitats. That particular item was exactly what the people in Putnam, the owner in Putnam, did not supply to the Commission. And they said, well, that's because no endangered animal was found on there. And the court favored the Commission's decision because the Commission has the authority to ask for that, even if that an item is an endangered piece of wildlife was not demonstrated as being there. He was required to provide that study to the Commission so that you as a commission or that commission would be sure there's no animal or endangered wildlife. Box turtles, wood turtles, spotted salamanders, these are all species of concern. You don't know they're there because the analysis hasn't been done. This applicant's burden is to show this commission that that wildlife does not exist there. 10.2.1, the environmental impact study. There hasn't been one given. There was an opinion given by the second soil type scientist who said, quote unquote, I was on the land 1 or 2 days and I didn't see anything. 10.2.3, a plan for maintenance and enhancement of the long-term productivity of such wetlands and watercourses. There is no such plan. 10.2.6, the character, now here's the one that, this is the one that was already alluded to. 10.2.6, the character and degree of injury to the reasonable use of the property. How can it not be in the purview of this commission if you have to watch out for the reasonable use of the neighboring properties? Of course it's in your purview. Let me read it. The character and degree of injury and reasonable use of the property which is caused or threatened by the proposed regulated activity. Some of my subpoints is the potential damage of the aquifers has recently been confirmed to us as a legitimate concern by an authority at the Nordic Valley Health and a letter has been provided to the chair and the commission stating as much. There can be no denial that there is a potential threat to the neighbor's reasonable use of their land if the aquifers are compromised. I believe you need more information to assure protection of our reasonable use of land. 13.4, the commission may require that the applicant, depending on the nature and scope of the regulated activity, to certify that it has public liability insurance against liability which might result from the proposed operation or the use of the wetlands and watercourses, covering any and all damage which might occur within 2 years of the completion of such operations. Any and all damage would include money that I have to, or my neighbors have to put out to live somewhere else when the health department kicks us out of our house, I might add. And the amount determined by the commission commensurate with the regulated activity. 10.2.7, the impact on the activity of the upstream and downstream wetlands and watercourses, stream corridors, as well as the impacts of the overall watershed. Do you have an impact study that will tell you what it's going to do to the Naugatuck River when the temperatures change from the water running off of a parking lot? And you don't have that. You don't have it because it hasn't been asked for. Another one. 10.2.10, the presence of quality of long-term management program for open spaces, conservation easements, stream corridors, detention basins, wetlands mitigation areas, and other land management areas to preserve and protect the wetlands and watercourses and other natural areas. Obtaining all this information is not easy. It is the applicant's quote-unquote burden. It's called a burden for a reason. It's not easy. One soil scientist on the site for 1 or 2 days looking around and stating that he saw nothing of concern is not enough. These are difficult and very involved studies with much detailed information for good reason. They will only be provided if this commission requires the applicant to provide them, or if this commission invites other agencies to get involved when the borough staff is not at the expert level. How did things somehow improve a little bit with the current proposed plan? That was because you as the commission required one thing, a soil scientist report. And look at the change that happened just from that. Look at the things that I just listed. How much information is missing? That Putnam case is very important to your consideration. I highly recommend you read it. You do not have to find the problem before you look for it. The applicant's burden is to prove to this commission that he's not going to do damage to these things, and you're not limited to the things that are on that list. It says these things, but not limited to. This commission is Naugatuck's only protector of the inland wetlands. There is no other agency or authority that can in jurisdiction over this commission, because the town regulations are as strict or stricter than those of the state. You as a body, you the commission as a body, are the guardian of the borough's wetlands and watercourses. The information above can only be denied if this commission allows it to be denied. Again, I refer you to that case, Unistar versus Conservation of Inland Wetlands of Putnam. It's a very, very revealing case that almost runs parallel with my arguments here. Feasibility and prudent alternatives. 10.2.2. The applicant's purpose for the proposed regulated activity and any feasible and prudent alternatives to the activity which would achieve the same basic purpose is less or no environmental impact, with less or no environmental impact to the watercourses. So far, discussion regarding feasible and prudent alternatives during previous public hearings on this project have been fleeting, and only in terms of feasible and prudent alternatives to this project in question be less impactful. This is a mistake in the interpretation of the regulation. The term in the regulation and in some Connecticut legal decisions is not just a reference to alternate plans of a particular project under consideration, but entirely different alternatives to the proposed activity on a parcel in question that would be better regarding the level of impact to the wetlands and watercourses. It is a consideration to be made not only on it being feasible, that what can be done, but also on what is prudent, what should be done, to minimize or eliminate the impact of the wetlands and watercourses. I suggest an appropriate consideration in this case might be whether there is a feasible and prudent alternative to excavating 60,000 cubic yards of earth and rock from a very steep hill above Coldwater Brook that feeds the Naugatuck River, or commercial activity for commercial activity with no less harm or no harm to the wetlands and watercourses. A side note, the applicant bought this land when it was zoned as residential. His purposes for use at that time could not be commercial because it wasn't zoned for that. If feasible was the only consideration, the standard can be easily met with drawings and plans. With enough money, almost anything regarding land use can be made feasible. However, the standard is not just considering what is feasible. The standard is to consider what be made feasible and prudent alternative when wetlands and watercourses are impacted. Please consider this. In light of what we know now, perhaps the decision to rezone the land was a mistake. You can't change that. I get it. It's water over the dam. Poor decision in 2016. But here you are. You're left holding the bag. So I will admit, I do not know what is a feasible improvement alternative. I heard questions asked about private resident. What do you think could be done there? Well, it's not our job to do that. It's the burden of the applicant to give you a full analysis of what can be done on that land so that he can use his land for, at least for what he bought it for, which by the way was residential at the time. Now, a couple last things. Listen, members of the commission, you know better than I that this commission does not exist to make bad decisions of the past good. That's not your purpose, you know that. Nor does it exist to guarantee an approval on what can be considered feasible activity. There's two criteria that have to be met. This commission exists to protect the wetlands and watercourses by regulating the use of the land in a way that is prudent for the natural resources. If there was only one proposal that came before this commission that is certain to negatively impact wetlands and watercourses, this would be the one. This would be the one. 60,000 cubic yards of dirt being pulled off of a hill underneath houses with wells above a brook that runs into the river. It's ridiculous. The questions I have for the members in this commission are these. Do you have in your hands right now all facts and circumstances that you're required to have in the regulations that needs to approve this application? Do you believe this application is complete, giving all that you're authorized to ask for? Do you believe it is only feasible, it is not only feasible, but prudent to approve a very risky project on a precarious location? If the answer to any of these questions are no, or I'm not sure, I suggest you have the legal authority to deny approval on the grounds of incomplete application or feasible or a feasible or prudent alternative exists. Therefore, I'm pleading with you, consider that case in Putnam and deny this approval of application 2008. Thank you very much for your time. My wife Lisa has a couple of statements, so as a separate resident, I hope you would let her speak, or do you want her to take a turn another turn? It's up to you.
Go ahead.
Hi, Lisa Sweet, Costco Lane. I'm not a public speaker, so please bear with me. I took a look at the soil type map on page 16 of 64 of the engineering the engineer's responsibility to Ed Paulick's report, or response to Ed Paulick's report. Page 16 of 64. It shows that the soil is classified close to the brook as 38E, which is 15 to 45% slope. That's the grade closer to the brook, but the area of excavation is classified as a 62D. And when I went to the legend, it stated that that was 15 to 35% slope. And it also states that that 62D means extremely stony, according to the legend. Extremely stony. And that tells me, I'm not an expert, but that's possible blasting. I know on page 2 of 64 of that document, it was asked, number 9 states, do on-site soils contain ledge that require blasting? That was asked. And the response was unknown because they can't, basically it's landlocked, they can't get on the land. I understand that. But I want to show you something that I took today out in my backyard. This is adjacent to the property. I hope you can see these pictures. Can you see that? That is in my backyard, and that is a piece of shallow ledge. We call it a rock garden because it's been there since this house was built. It's a very large piece of ledge. I'm going to show you another piece here. That's another side of it. It's very large. Ledge is present in our yard and throughout the slope down there. So that you will find that on the property. To me, it's very likely that blasting will need to be done. And this is what really concerns us. There's a lot of concerns with this project, but I'm just going to focus on that tonight. Let's see. Oh, let me show you this. I'm going to go back to this here. I'm going to go back to this particular. Can you see this picture with the ledge? What you're seeing at the top of the screen is the property. It's where it falls off the edge. That is the property line. So you can see how close that ledge is to the property in question. When I was discussing with Naugatuck Valley Health, I spoke with, he's I believe a senior, I'm not exactly sure there. He's definitely been with Naugatuck Valley Health, it sounded like, for quite some time. And he did validate the concerns that we had with our wells. He stated that our wells are shallow. He looked at everything, and he said that it's absolutely a possibility that the excavation as well as blasting can render our wells less productive. And when I talked with him about the wells going, well, what if our well goes dry? He said, well, you'd have to leave your home. That's a health issue. And it just like hit me like a wall. I would have to leave my home. And I mean, this is what keeps me up at night. It's the last thing that I think of when I close my eyes, and it's the first thing I think of in the morning. And I know that there's other issues in town. On Counselor Drive, there's 20 people that have been dealing with water issues, not Counselor Drive, I'm sorry, Crestwood Drive, excuse me, that have had water issues for the last year. And they're not going to get city water for another year, almost another year. And I think to myself, what are their lives like? The disruption to their lives has to be incredible, and the stress that must put on them. The thought of having to live like that, it's really an undescribable feeling just to even think that that could happen to us. And if this passes, I understand a bond will be required so that the financial burden won't be on the homeowners. It won't be on the homeowners financially. I understand that, and that's very good. But a bond cannot compensate for complete disruption of our lives until water can get up here, city water can be tied into and get up to our homes. They're living a nightmare over there on Crestwood Drive, and we don't want to live in that nightmare here on Costco Lane and Whitney Place. So I'm just going to end it with that, and I hope you take all these things in consideration. Thank you for your time.
Okay, next we will go to Christine Yanelli. I will ask you to unmute Christine. State your name and address, please. You have to unmute yourself, Christine. Okay.
I've got it. Thank you, Ed. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to
Name and address, please.
mention that, my name is Christine Yanelli, 9 Chestnut Street.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I gave my address, and I'm a lifetime resident. I've lived in Naugatuck all my life. So to begin with, I appreciate the Inland Wetlands' perseverance and diligence with this extremely important matter. Those of us who have had years of environmental experience appreciate your attentive concerns during these meetings. I'm a Naugatuck Conservation Commissioner going on 6 years, an advocate for Connecticut Votes for Animals and Wildlife, member of the Western Connecticut Bird Club, member of the Naugatuck Land Trust, the Vinyl Haven Land Trust, and participant of the Northeast Pollinator Pathway Movement, citizen scientist for Michigan State University for the Bee Grow Milkweed Program, steward and publicity director of the Guntown Environmental Group. Fulling Mill Brook is a significant historical area. And there's a booklet at the Historical Society that explains all this. We need to be looking at what's really happened here. That preservation and protection of wetlands, watercourses, and other natural areas need to be maintained by the Inland Wetlands Commission. Regulation 10.2.1. The most important and vulnerable concern needing protection, safe refuge, and secure habitats are wildlife, migrating birds and pollinators, vernal pools with amphibians and freshwater amphipods, which are flat bodies of crustaceans, wetlands for pollinators, woodlands for bobcats, coyotes, foxes, skunks, raccoons, possums, bear, squirrels, deer, and a green corridor pathway for wildlife and migrating birds to the Naugatuck River, aquatic life, and other beings. This is an area of concern, an area of special, matchless, unique, distinctive qualities that every Naugatuck citizen understands who reveres their town's natural resources that are found along the Fulling Mill Brook. Protection is what is needed. This is not a desolate parking lot or untidy, depressed site or a fragmented clearing or an abandoned lot. It is a beautiful, scenic, historical, natural, wildlife abundant, fast flowing brook and woodland area that must be preserved as such. Inland wetlands should be protecting the Fulling Mill Brook's natural character, one of beauty and wonder. Protection of the brook's health and the loss of habitat, ensuring no harm to wildlife, aquatic life, bird life, and pollinators is needed from the Inland Wetland Commission's vote of no to this disruptive development. In the Inland Wetland Regulation 10.2.1 and 10.2.4, the environmental impact on the natural resources and wildlife habitats, waterways, and wetlands for financial incentives and potential economic gain will make it more difficult for the preservation and conservation of wildlife, birds, migrating birds, pollinators, woodlands, diversity of plant life, and aquatic life. Development here will do irreparable damage to the woodland streams, the Fulling Mill Brook, the disappearance of wildlife pollinators, and threaten underground water springs, ground soils, and residents' drinking water. There will be irreversible and irretrievable loss of wetland and watercourse resources caused by this development activity. Wetlands are a first line of defense against flooding. Surface runoff from Route 68 and swollen water from streamlets, watercourses, and underground streams flowing into the Fulling Mill Brook does cause severe, intense flooding to the brook's already raging water and impacts wetlands found here. High water flows means flooding, and in due course, flooding and heavy accumulation of slush, and ice can detour traveling along Route 68. Climate change can cause new and erratic consequences like flooding. So there should be long-term, and I say that again, long-term maintenance control of stormwater discharges by the applicant. This proposed 10,000 square foot building with parking lot and bridge will affect the existing permeable surfaces that drain into the wetlands and watercourses. There are no pollution controls to ensure the long-term maintenance of this proposed development. Deny this application. This is an irresponsible development that will destroy the beauty and roadside wonder along the Flamingo Brook. Due to the impact on wetlands, water quality, wildlife, Naugatuck River, the Green Corridor Pathway, and potential impact on neighborhood wells and drinking water, I urge the Naugatuck Inland Water Courses Commission to deny the Zero Prospect Street application. Vote no to Zero Prospect Street development based on 10.2.1 and 10.2.4. Deny this application. Thank you.
Okay, if anybody else would like to speak, please raise your hand. If you're on video camera, I do see you, Kevin. I'll go to you in a second. If you're on video cam, please raise your hand. If you're not on video camera, you're going to have to put a hand up so that we know you'd like to speak. I do see you, Len. I'm going to go to Kevin first. Your hand was up. I'm going to ask you to unmute, and you can speak, Kevin. This is Kevin Zach.
Hi, my name is Kevin Zach. I reside at 132 Radnor Avenue in Naugatuck, and I'm the president of the Naugatuck River Revival Group, and I'm extremely opposed to this project. And as Christine Yanelli eloquently stated, many of the reasons that I am opposing it, I want to defer you to, or refresh you to, Mr. Sweet's opening statement. And I guess if I wanted to torture you all, I'd repeat every word he said. I do not understand why all those things that are reasonable to be requested of the applicant to be brought forth to all of us. It shouldn't be our burden to prove there's a box turtle there, and at our expense and our time. He bought the property for a particular purpose. He changed the purpose. It's very clear, and I think it's the responsibility of the inland wetlands to, if they base it on information that has been brought forth to this moment, is to easily reject this application. I don't think it's a no-brainer to me personally. I don't have to repeat what Mrs. Yanelli and William and Mrs. Sweet had stated. It would just drag this meeting out longer, but every word that I heard is extremely reasonable, and reasonable minds, I believe, would agree that the applicant did not do his quote-unquote due diligence in this situation. And if that was a residential development, that would be another thing if he wanted to build a house there. But he changed the rules of the game. He moved the goalposts, and to fit his financial aspirations here. He does not live there. He will not be affected. He only is affected if he creates a profit for himself and or a loss. But that's not our problem. None of anybody on this meeting or in past meetings have invested in this. It's not our problem. It is his burden. And by the way, just a little technical thing, the very beginning of this meeting, I don't understand why we're not meeting in person, but you have your reasons. You chose it this way
but it was very difficult to understand his particular issues. I found everybody else that was on Zoom very clear. So it's neither here or there, but I just thought that that's was needed to be brought out. And thank you. And I really do hope that it's rejected based on the information that is brought forth. And you know, all those studies and things take time, and not just a quick momentary. You know, you come on a nice sunny day and you see what's there or what's not, but nobody's described what would happen in a major storm event because they haven't been there. So, thank you.
Len Yanelli, please.
Thanks, Ed, and hi everyone. Len Yanelli, Chestnut Street. I'm the Community Outreach Director of the Guntown Group. We're a environmental cultural committee, 26 years and going strong. We're involved a lot with floral and faunal work. In fact, I'd like to speak to 10.2.1, and I would add 10.2.4. Tracy already read 10.2.1. I'd like to refer just one point, really. The page 3 of the report that we received last time, that's the 64-page report, versus, by the way, the 21-page concise report we got from the initial soil scientist. But in that 64 pages, if you go to page 3, and I'll quote you so you don't have to, you know, try to find all this stuff. Page 3 says the brook, referring to Flamingo Brook, likely serves as a habitat corridor for species attracted to riparian habitats. Riparian simply meaning the sides of the stream as it cascades down that elevation there, which is really part of the wonderful part of this stream. Not all our streams have that. Long Meadow Brook, which we're very familiar with the Guntown Group, you know, just doesn't have that type of an angle, and especially the where this applicant wants to go, that it has a ravine-like quality, which makes it very different, very cool, traps a lot of oxygen while it's traveling down that incline down to the river, and that makes it, there's a uniqueness there with that. So that's very important. But the wording really struck me. It says the brook likely serves as a habitat corridor. That's almost mind-boggling. We've seen, and I hope you've seen too, over the past year, some of the films that neighbors have made from various angles of wildlife trekking through there. Possum, raccoon, pretty typical, coyote, but also bear, fisher. I mean, how could you say likely serves as a habitat corridor? That's just mind-boggling. And further, it refers you there on page 3 to a map. Doesn't tell you where to go, but I found it. It's after page 3-3. Under that page, there's a map, and it's done by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. A reputable group for sure. But in the upper corner of that map, in the small print, that probably, I don't know how many people saw it, I had to increase, you know, you have to use that little plus sign to increase the magnification. It says this, and I quote, "The U.S. Fish and Wildlife is not responsible for the accuracy of what you're looking at." I mean, I found that incredible that in this voluminous 64-page report, you know, we get a map, and that the very service that has the map in there can't vouch for the accuracy of it, yet it's in the report trying to vouch for the fact that it's likely to be a wildlife habitat. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. The person who spoke last week, who, as I understand it, did the floral faunal survey, could not remember if he was there 1 or 2 days. Could not remember if he was there 1 or 2 days. I mean, I just don't, some of the things we hear and things we look at just don't add up. And I would urge the commissioners, you know, to not get lost in just the fact that that's 64 pages. In the previous soil report by the soil scientist was 21 pages, because that one's concise. The 64-page one is not. And the fact that you can't even, they don't even have a page there to refer you, to reference you to. I taught field biology, and I'll tell you, I would hand back a report from a student who handed it to me without referencing the material that they're putting at the back of that report. And this 64-page report does that. So again, it's regulations for commissioners 10.2.1, 10.2.4, wildlife habitat, green corridor, all that is there. And I would say deny it not only for that, but also regulation 8.11. 8.11, it's incomplete. And it's unbelievable that over a year's time, we're still presented with incomplete material. And I'm not referring to even getting into the well issue, which has been well covered here already and in the past. I mean, just from a floral faunal standpoint, you've got to reject this application based on 8.11. So anyway, thank you very much. I think it's very gratifying that so many citizens are here, and especially to see Burgess here. And I hope at some point, if not this time, next time. Looks like there's going to be a next time. Tracy announced that already. That we hear from the Burgesses. We need, you know, we need advocates, and the reason why we vote for people, you know, for the Board of Mayor and Burgesses is we need advocates. Along with ourselves. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time and patience and all that. Thank you.
Okay, next I'm going to go to Michelle Zykowski. I'm going to ask you to unmute, state your name and address, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Michelle Zykowski, 86 Whitney Place. Everyone who has spoke has done an amazing job. I had planned to read a couple of regulations that have already been discussed at length, the 10.2.1 reg and the, let me scroll right down, the 10.2.6 regulation, so I will not go over that. I did want to point out the 8.6.4 regulation, analysis of wildlife habitat on near site and the impact of proposed use. Looking at the October minutes, Marcia did request that be considered. The minutes state, Marcia requested the application provide information on how the proposed development could affect the Naugatuck River and downstream and the habitat. Refer to 8.6.4, 10.2.1, 10.2.4, and 10.2.7. So back in October, you know, this was discussed and asked about, and here we are in March. Like, I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. Also, that figure of earth and rock that needs to be removed, the map, the site plan that was prepared does say 59,000 cubic yards of earth. Anybody like have a vision of what that exactly looks like? Well, thanks to my neighbor Bill, who's so good with figures, he figured out 12-yard dump trucks, that would be 3,277 dump trucks of earth and rock, cut, blasted, removed from this hillside next to this brook and wetlands. That is an unfathomable amount of earth in this area. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. I want to thank you, commissioners, for all the time and effort. I know that you're putting great thought into this, and this is not easy. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. One more thing. Some of you on the commission have seen a petition that was put out 9 days ago. And in 9 days, we've had 726 citizens sign this petition in opposition to this project. 726 signatures in 9 days. I think that is a huge number as well. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I do not see any more hands up. I do not see any more people who have requested to speak.
Yeah, you did raise
my hands up.
Okay, okay, we've got David Sikowski. We'll go to David.
Yes.
And then I see Charlie after David, okay?
Okay. Thanks, David Zykowski, 86 Whitney Place. I'm not going to rehash things we've already talked about, but I do want to thank Bill and Lisa for their passionate display of what we may be going through if this project goes through, and it's quite frightening. And just to continue on Michelle's points about the amount of earth that's going to be displayed, I've asked a question of this commission and this applicant several times over the course of the last few months, and I've never gotten an answer to it. The closest it's come is that, oh, this is such a tiny piece of this project that we shouldn't bother ourselves with that. I think that was coming from the town engineer. But there is a plan to support a pipe at the top of this hill with 20,000 pounds of rock in the form of riprap. And I've asked repeatedly how they were going to get that 20,000 pounds of rock up that extremely steep boulder-strewn hill with very erodible soil. No one has answered that yet. It's not in the latest plans. They're going to have to build a road. That tiny little piece, quote unquote, of this project is going to cause even more damage to that hillside and the water courses below.
Okay, Mr. Sikowski,
Yes,
I'll just let you know that that part of the project was taken off this plan. That's why it has not been addressed.
Gotcha.
It was also posted to the website, and that was removed, was it previously a month or two ago? No. Or last month or so? But
after last month's meeting, they did remove that since that is not their, it's the town's issue, not the applicant's. It's the town dumping onto that property.
Gotcha. So they were going to build a road, and that was cost prohibitive.
No, they were not going to build a road.
They would have had to if they were going to do that.
No, they haven't.
So thank you for your time, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak.
okay. Charlie Marangi will unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi, Charlie Marangi, 241 City Hill Street. You know, tonight I've heard a lot of excellent testimony. We've heard chapter and verse on the regulations and the standards. That does not need to be reiterated again. We have had people talk to us and explain the uniqueness of the geography of this brook and its overall impact on wildlife, and more importantly, the Naugatuck River, the very same Naugatuck River that many people are working very hard to get to recover so it can be more of a viable resource to town, both economically and for leisure purposes. And the most important thing, and that's what I can't get past, you're talking about drinking water. I don't care if there's a 1% chance that somebody could lose their ability to draw water from their well and potentially lose their ability to live in their home. No project is worth that. I think no Burgess wants to see a grand list shrink or not grow, but the fact is it's not worth the potential loss in wildlife. It's not worth the potential loss in the ability for people to live in their homes and have that common right to the water that they need to live I just cannot support anything like this, and I really will put it to this commission, and you guys have worked hard on this, and you've probably heard a lot more about it than you wanted to hear, and I understand. But I put it to you to think about your legacy, because the decision you make on this is going to be the legacy, and it's how you're remembered. And I would say a legacy of protecting drinking water, protecting the natural environment, and following the standards is a legacy you want to have. And I encourage you guys to stand against this petition.
Lisa Sweet, you wanted to make another comment?
Yeah, just one thing. Actually, to Len Yanelli's comment about the likely habitat corridor. Our neighbors actually call the border of our backyard the Costco Lane Zoo. It has so much wildlife, it's unbelievable. We have 2 trail cams that we run right at the edge of the properties. And in 4.5 hours the other night, we had 2 coyote. Now it's a 4.5 hour time span. 2 coyote, a possum, a raccoon, a feral cat, and a bobcat run through in 4.5 hours. And that is just a very small strip of land. The wildlife in that area, on that piece of property, is really incredible. It's a very unique property, and it definitely is a habitat corridor, a wildlife corridor.
All set?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Melissa Leonard.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, Melissa Leonard, 450 Guntown Road. I couldn't agree more with everything that everyone has said. I'm not going to rehash anything like everybody said. I just want to say that with 2 things now, hearing Lisa's comment about wildlife, 4 hours, I mean, that's incredible to see that type of wildlife in a 4-hour span. I can only imagine how much is going through that entire property every night. But my concern, in addition to the wells, obviously, I agree with Charlie, 1 well is too much to risk. And the amount of dirt that, even if they don't blast, the amount of dirt and rock that's going to have to be moved and removed from that property, I don't see how the brook can be protected with that kind of construction. So I think there's numerous reasons that this application can and should be denied. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, Tracy, I do not see anybody else with a hand up. I'll go one more time, second time, and third time. Okay, Tracy, to you now.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for your comments on this. You know, they are always appreciated. I know that the commission appreciates it, and I'm sure that the applicant appreciates it as well, as hearing your feedback on that. I'd like to turn that back over to Brian Ford to get his comments on that from what he's heard, and if he can, you know, provide any feedback or anything. And as you know, this will continue to next month as well, but I thought, you know, while the applicant was here, or his representatives were here, it was important for them to hear what y'all had to say. And just as it's important for you guys to hear what he has to say. So Brian, I'm gonna turn that back over to you. And if there's anything that you would like to say on this.
Not Brian Ford, but I'll try to do. We've heard a lot of comments, a lot of rehashing of what was said last month. A lot of the questions, a lot of the points raised today, citing the sections of the inland wetlands regulations, most of those referred to said the commission may require this. There's no mandatory, most of them didn't have any mandatory language in it. Information has been submitted in accordance with the regulations. Again, we've requested that this hearing be continued to your April meeting, and hopefully we can address to everyone's satisfaction at that point the comments received today from Southwest Soils and comments which we've heard again tonight.
Tracy?
Okay, thank you, Attorney McVeary, appreciate that. Okay, go ahead.
Tracy,
Yes.
you have a question from Marcia?
Okay.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Marcia.
Hi. It's not necessarily a question for you. I'm not really sure who this question goes to, but I'm just going to refer back to what Michelle Zajkowski referred to when she cited the meeting minutes from October, where we did request some studies. And it was my understanding that the report from Mr. Pollack was supposed to satisfy that, but it appears that potentially that's not the case. And I'm not really sure where to go from here regarding that report. And it seems that people are debating whether or not the studies have been properly done on the habitat and the effect on downstream and the wildlife. So if maybe Mr. Plord would like to address that.
There was an extensive response regarding the wildlife habitat, plant and wildlife habitat, which is on page 2 of our report of the responses. The responses cover, there's a list of, the wildlife that was noted, and obviously the plant. So I believe we have addressed that within the report. As far as downstream impact from this development, the design that we have incorporated, besides providing for the required zero increase in stormwater runoff, also provides for the water quality. The numerous items that we have addressed, that we've shown on the plans, that we have spoken to numerous times, all in the chain of the stormwater management plan help clear the water, clean the water before it outlets into the wetlands. Now, let's keep in mind, I believe the Naugatuck River is a mile away, so we have a mile of Route 68 between us and the Naugatuck River. Now, pretty safe to say that DOT isn't putting as much care into their water quality that's dumping into the Falling Mill Brook as we are. So, we can monitor, we can clean, we can, there's going to be, we've stated on the plans, and we've worked with the town engineer and the wetlands officer to have a post-construction maintenance plan put together and put forth that the applicant and the owner have to abide by, both as far as monitoring during heavy storm events afterwards, and repairing and replacing whatever needs to be repaired or replaced. So we do, and it's common practice to do that, especially for a project this size, and we understand the proximity to the wetlands. We have to understand that the current bridge crossing that we've got is a clear span bridge, completely outside of the wetlands themselves. Obviously, there's going to be some construction disturbance to a small portion of the wetlands during construction, but that will be restored. So the corridor that has been mentioned for the habitat corridor is going to maintain as it is now. So because we've incorporated the full clear span bridge. The utilities are not going to run underneath the water; they're going to run up above. So I believe the current state of the plan, the responses to Ed Pollack's report, and together with the soil scientists that we presented by Dan Hagman last month, we feel successfully abide by the regulations and what the town engineer has requested. He has provided a response letter to his latest comments. I believe it was last month. That was in the record. So we've incorporated what we feel goes above and beyond there's any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Seems that they're all set here, Tracy.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any other questions for Brian Plord that they'd like to ask while we have him?
I do.
Kathleen, you're going to have
Kathleen, you have to speak up.
And
Brian,
put it right
I
up.
just talked to Brian right next to me. Yeah, the map we got in.
Got to go right up to your mouth, Kathleen.
The map we got in the packet this week, the soil designation, is that what this is for?
Can't hear her.
The designation, these are the soil designations?
Correct.
Could you tell me exactly the area of construction, the type of soil designations? I think I got it, but I'm not sure.
So our construction made.
Here, I'll let you
Let me draw on this. Our construction is in this area here. Okay, so basically just involves this soil type and this soil type here. Yeah.
So, just for the record, it's Lumi sand.
Yeah.
And then it's the fine sandy loam. Is that correct?
Right, and again, this is taken from the National Resource Conservation Service Wet Soil Survey from their website. You know, it kind of goes back to the point that we've made a couple times is this being landlocked, there's a lot of information that we could glean once we get access to the property. And obviously one of it is.
Yeah, it's hard to hear. Hard to understand and hear what's being said.
Use the microphone over there, or just come closer to the speaker here.
Is this better?
There you go.
There we go. So I lost my train of thought. So obviously, you know, one thing has to come before the other, right? And we can't cross. As far as under the Wetlands Commission purview is the wetland activity and the upland review area. To get access into the property, obviously we have to construct a bridge. And the bridge is required to get access into the property to do any subsoil investigation, whatever is required to determine whether or not blasting is involved, and also to determine, you know, the soil types that we were stating there. Now, this is from a web soil survey that's gleaned over the entire country. So accuracy is, it leaves a little bit to be desired. But we have to go by those for when we start designing the drainage system. So we've incorporated whatever information is typically available, and it goes in line with everything that is common engineering practices. And we've, so it's, again, there's still just there's some information, and once we get access into the property, we could determine better.
So what you've stated is, because people cannot hear you, unfortunately, what you've stated is you need access to the property via the bridge to get information for the soil.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm all set. Thanks, Brian.
Is there another alternative way you can get access to the property without building a bridge?
No, because there's private property all around. And then, of course, we have Fully Mill Brook off of Route 68.
Firewood question. I don't know if the chair is.
Tracy, Ned has a question?
Yes.
Comment?
I'd like to ask the applicant's engineer in follow-up to a question from Commissioner Pucks about.
Louder.
Commissioner Pucks about the, there are two parts of it. One had to do with the wildlife activity, and I understand that your response was that you addressed that in the response to Mr. Pollack's request, or his letter. The second part of our question, as I understand it, dealt with the water quality issue. And my question to you is, does the project conform to the Walnut, Connecticut State Water Quality Regulations, the most recent additions? And if so, could you articulate what regulations to which it adheres to, and how it complies in your opinion?
Yes, it absolutely does. So we've incorporated, besides, the standard catch basin with a 2-foot sump, which is the depth of the catch basin itself below the outlet pipe. So that traps any sediment and debris as well. On the catch basin outlets, there's going to be a PVC hooded outlet, snout is what the brand name is, to further prohibit debris from entering the drainage system. Prior to the stormwater entering the detention basin, we've also incorporated a hydrodynamic stormwater separation device, and what that does is just it's basically a vortex chamber, and it further separates out any sediment and debris. Again, it has to be properly maintained at least once or twice a year, and that will be part of the stormwater management plan that the town, the applicant and the town will form. The water will then enter into the detention basin. There is a sediment forebay immediately at the outlet pipe, which further, anything else that's left in the stormwater pipes will further settle up into that and then overflow into the detention basin. Detention basin as an outlet control structure will slowly allow the water to exit to minimize velocity. The pond is sized to accept the stormwater from the additional runoff that we're creating from the pavement area in the building, again, in conformance with the stormwater DOT storm drainage manual. And then that, again, will outlet into a finger of wetlands through a riprap plunge pool. So we have numerous devices in place to trap and catch and treat and maintain debris.
All right, thank you. Let me just follow quickly. And so is, in your print, your latest print, do you place the continuing maintenance and operation of those devices as an obligation of the applicant and owner into the future?
Yes.
And
yes,
that's it? It's on the print?
It is on the plans.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Tracy.
All right, is there any other questions from the commission? No? If not, then I think that, excuse me, that we will continue, if it's okay, we'll continue this hearing to next April 7th is our next meeting date. So the public will have a chance to comment as well, and I believe that will be our final public hearing on this application at that time. So I thank you all again. I really appreciate everybody's feedback on that. It does help us. So again, thank you. I would like a 5-minute recess, just for us to regroup until we move on with our regular agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. We'll be back in.
Thank you.
We're having trouble with our other computer. We're all set now, Tracy. Go ahead.
You're all set? Okay, so we're moving on from the 4A, there are 3 public comment to the 4A old business, and that was our decision regarding the application IW 20-08, which we just had the public hearing on. And although I don't think that we're ready to make a decision regarding this, obviously, since the public hearing is still open, I do think that there are some things to discuss, just based on the 64-page report that I think we finally all got to review on that, plus the additional information from Southwest Conservation District that was provided today as well, and along with a lot of good points that were brought up by the public.
Tracy,
yes.
Go ahead, Lori.
Tracy, we can't talk about it now because we're outside the public hearing. That can only be discussed during the public hearing.
Well, it says commission discussion.
Of course,
That is our commission discussion.
But that's for when we make our motion. So that's what that's there for. How we always have the public hearing, and then the public hearings continue to next month. So there's no discussion down here.
Okay. All right, then I guess that's continued for that. It'd be difficult to make a decision if we can't all discuss it, but okay. So item 5, new business. Doesn't look like there's any new business. I did not see on here, oh, did we have, oh, we skipped over 2. The review approval of the February 3rd meeting minutes. Did everybody get a chance to review that?
Yes, they did.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the February 3rd, 2021 meeting minutes?
Madam Chair, this is Brian. I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes as stated.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second Tracy, it's Kathy.
All right, so Brian is first and Kathleen is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. The approval, the February 3rd, 2021 meeting minutes are approved as written. Okay. Item 6, correspondence. Doesn't appear to be any. Am I correct in that, Lori?
Correct, no correspondence.
Okay. The item 7, the WEO report.
None.
Okay. The item 8, administrative business. Is there any administrative business?
None.
Okay. And item 9, the adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, this is Brian. I would like to motion for an adjournment.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it. It's Wendy.
Wendy? Okay, Brian first, Wendy second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. The meeting is adjourned at 8:12 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.